Good morning to everyone, and thank you so much for coming to this TED Talk. I know it's a bit of a paradoxical title that we're always fond of saying failure is not an option, and it's really not. I'm saying it's a requirement. But to explain that, it's really about talking about how passion and even distraction can help us find what I'm calling our vocation. Thank you, Arvin. So what I'd like to do is get the clicker to work. There you go. So this was the theme that I believe was given to all the topics, Youth GPS to Success. And it actually worked very well for my talk because for me, I have always viewed success as a journey. In other words, there are many different ways to get to your destination. So there, I've fulfilled the theme of GPS and ways. Speaking of journeys, let me share one with you. And what we'll do, and in the interest of time, I'll kind of do this bullet point style, so we'll have a bit more time to talk about the points of the journey, which I hope will be of relevance to you. So, once upon a time, in a galaxy far, far away, there was a person named Robert Suntay who started out teaching in Xavier School way before you were born, 1983 to 1984. I was a second-year high school religion teacher, and I loved my job so much that I had to quit after 1 year of teaching. Why? My parents were so afraid I would never stop teaching, I would never be able to support a family, and that was that. So they said, you gotta quit. What happened next? Basically, they said, okay, we want you to try out yourself, your skills, or whatever in the private sector. So I joined the private sector starting actually from 1984 to 86. I worked in the private sector here in the Philippines for 2 years, and then we had the big EDSA revolution. Things got messy, so I went abroad to grad school instead. And to my parents' great delight, I got a good job with what was then one of the top management consulting firms, Anderson Consulting, and at least to all outside appearances, I was living the glamorous consulting life. Except I hated it. I hated every minute of it. The culture, the dog-eat-dog, the client stuff, living out of a suitcase, I truly didn't like it. And at that point in time, my mother was also diagnosed with end-stage cancer. So I was really desperately trying to find a way to get back to the Philippines. And a funny thing happened along the way. As I was trying to get back to the Philippines, I got a call from my old boss at Xavier School. And this time, the call was for a job offer to come back, but this time as principal of Xavier School. Now, this kind of puzzled me because I was asking myself, these guys must be pretty desperate if they're asking me to come back as principal. I was 29 years old. I did not speak Chinese. I'm not Chinese. I'm not an alumnus of the school. I had all of 1 year teaching experience and 0 of school leadership experience. And they were asking me to be the head of arguably one of the finest high schools in the country. Well, I figured they wanted to take a chance on me, so why don't I take a chance on them? And as I said, I really wanted to go back home to be with my mom, so I accepted the job, and it was the most amazing 6 years of my entire educational life. Really fulfilling, really exciting, really challenging. And I was actually going to sign on for another 3-year term when another unexpected thing happened along the way. The president of Ateneo de Manila at the time, who was also on the board of Xavier, asked to see me. I thought he was going to make me sign on the dotted line for the next 3 years at Xavier. But instead, he said, no, you know, Bobbitt, you've been there, done that with Xavier. You're doing a good job. They like you. but you got to do something different. Come to the dark side. No, they didn't say that. Said, come to Ateneo instead. Try something different. We'll make you an assistant professor. You can work with the provincial Jesuit schools. But most important of all, we'll set you up to work with the Department of Education, and you can change the public school landscape. So again, that sounded really, really cool. But to be honest, I guess I can characterize my experience in Ateneo as kind of a love-hate relationship. I love the teaching. I love the working with the provincial schools of Ateneo. I really loved working with the public school teachers, but apologies to anyone who might be affected. I really, really hated working with Department of Education and with the local government units. It takes a special kind of patience and perseverance and appreciation to work in that sector. It wasn't for me. Fortunately, again, at that time, after 3 years of teaching in the university, my boss said, okay, you gotta go. This time, you gotta go get those 3 letters after your name, because if you want to stay in the academe, you need your PhD. Now, fortunately, at the time, I had just gotten married, and my wife was a beautiful, brilliant eye surgeon, and she also needed to go abroad to do further studies. So, as luck had it, we both ended up at Harvard. I was doing my PhD in education. She was doing her subspecialization in eye surgery, and it was really one of the most amazing, challenging, exciting, sometimes scary years of our lives, working with the best of the best people in their fields. And it looked like the road was really paving its way. My wife was going to come home, was going to be a doctor here. I was going to come back and teach at Ateneo and set up a principal's training center, when unexpectedly, I think it was about 3 weeks after my wife graduated from her program at Harvard Medical School, 3 weeks after she graduated, she got diagnosed with advanced cancer. 3 months after that, my dad got diagnosed with advanced cancer. 3 months after that, her dad got diagnosed with advanced cancer. And the next year, they all died one after the other. So not really what I had in mind for the journey. And it was at that point that I decided, maybe the universe, maybe someone up there is telling me that I'm meant to do something else and go somewhere else on my journey. And that's how I ended up, without any real intent to do so, I ended up, together with family and friends, setting up a cancer support center here in the Philippines. We set up Carewell in 2006. It's still operating up to today, so if my math is right, that's about 18 years. And I have not regretted the decision of leaving Harvard, giving up my scholarship and doctoral degree in order to come here and do this. As was mentioned during the introduction, before I forget, the journey that you're going to be on, in your GPS to success, isn't all about work. All work and no play is no fun. So it's also about the relationships you make along the way. So don't forget that. Don't neglect that. But as I was saying, as the introduction for me mentioned it, nowadays I do a lot of my work, sometimes above the water. Most of it is under the water, where I handle marine conservation, conservation education, and videography. But that's another story for another day. Sorry, can't see the screen. So what I want to do now is I'll end this little journey, which I think could be considered successful, and let's see what lessons we can get out of it. So, number one, many of us think that success is the accomplishment of an aim, a purpose, or a goal. Yes, of course, that's very true. You want to be able to get what you're going after. But what many people sometimes forget, that it's also a process. It's sometimes, in certain ways, even more important what you learn along the way to achieving the objective that really, really counts and will really, really be part of your GPS to success. So it's not always just the finish line. It's not always just the trophy. It's actually the race. Learning from the race, growing from the race, enjoying the race, even when things sometimes get hard. So keep that in mind. It's not just the winning, it's the process. Second, success can mean many different things to many different people, depending on where they are or where you are in your life story. At one point in time, I thought becoming a big-time consultant in a big-time management consulting firm was going to be the main success for me. Turned out it wasn't. Never in my wildest dreams did I think of becoming a principal, not at 29 years old, not ever. And yet, it turned out to be one of the more successful jobs I have ever been privileged to have. So that's one thing. I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd put up a cancer center. What I always thought was, yeah, I want to go to Harvard. I want to get my PhD. But that didn't happen. And yet, I ended up doing something that I would have never really thought of or even considered doing. And I now also consider that to be one of the more successful experiences I've had the opportunity to have. Now, does that mean I'm successful? You know, at the end of the day, it's really up to you. Some people tell me, what? You left Andersen Consulting after they gave you a work visa, you had a beautiful condo, you had a nice sports car, you were living this lifestyle. You left Andersen Consulting to go to Xavier? What the heck? What's going on there? So, some people didn't think I was successful. I would like to think that some of the students I work with and the school community people I worked with in Xavier consider my going there a success. Hopefully, I didn't burn the school down, and I hope I didn't kick out anyone from Xavier who's now in this room. But, success is a relative thing. Some people think, what? You gave up a full ride Harvard scholarship to put up a cancer center in the Philippines? What's going on with that? So, some people think that wasn't a success. But if I talk to the people, to the thousands of people our foundation has been able to serve, I'd like to think some of them think my decision was a success. So, at the end of the day, you really shouldn't listen to all the voices out there. Okay, listen, but you are the one who will be the ultimate decider of whether what you did was successful or not. So, let's get to the main point. Two main things. If there is only one thing that I want you to get out of my little sharing today, this is what it is. This is the main takeaway I want you to leave with. How do you know where to go? What North Star, what beacon, what compass will continue to guide your GPS for success when the satellites go down, when the storms are raging, when the instruments fail? What will keep you on track? For me, this is something I learned when I was already working. I wish I knew this when I was in high school or college, and that's why I'm sharing this with you now. If you want to know where you are supposed to go, it's really simple. It's not easy, but it's really simple. Go to where your heart's deep gladness meets the world's deep needs. That was written by one of my favorite spiritual writers, Frederick Buechner. Go where your heart's deep gladness meets the world's deep needs. Why is that so? Why is that so important? Because your heart's deepest gladness is your passion. This is what gets you up every morning. This is what gets you so excited. This is what keeps you working even when the going gets really tough. It is not easy to figure out what your passion is. That's why you have to keep searching. And when you find it, you have to relentlessly hold on to it and keep on nurturing it. And when you found your passion, if you can find where it intersects, how you can put what you love at the service of the world around you in some kind of job, in some kind of company, in some kind of career, then it becomes your vocation. And that's where the magic begins. Because if you think about it, there is no way that you will not be great at your passion because you love it. And because you love it, you're just going to keep doing it and doing it no matter what. It doesn't matter whether that passion is playing music, art, becoming an investment banker, working as a lawyer. Parents are beginning to worry that I didn't mention stuff like that. So it almost doesn't matter what your passion is. All it matters is you find it. And you'll know it when you find it because you'll feel it here. It's what will get you up every day and keep on doing it. Find your passion, keep doing it. How can you not be a success? And in a very real sense, you can never be a failure either. Because how can you be a failure when you are doing what you love every single time? Some of the other speakers here represent that. I won't steal their thunder, but I can tell you a lot of the speakers here are living out their passion, and that's why they're successful, and that's why they're your speakers here today. But you can never fail doing what you really love. And of course, again, parents, don't worry. Of course, money is important. Security is important. Making a living is important. All of that is important. And believe me, if your passion finds its proper place where it meets the needs of the world, all that will come. It will come eventually. May not come right away, but it will come. The money, the security, if you want popularity, if you want fame, that's going to be there. But don't make that what you look for first. First, find what makes you really and deeply happy, and trust that the rest will follow. So, to wrap things up, I'd just like to share with you why this was the title I decided to come up with for this talk. Why is failure not an option? Why is it a requirement? Because failures aren't really failures if you think about it. If we're using the metaphor of the journey, as we said, all the detours, roadblocks, traffic, wrong turns, even when the car breaks down, even when you have to change your destination, all of those aren't failures. They are simply learning opportunities. And human nature being what it is, I don't know if it's good or bad, we tend to learn more from our mistakes we tend to learn more from our hard lessons more than we do from the successes and the easy ones. That's just the way humans are hardwired. So don't think of your mistakes, don't think of your failures as such. Think of them as necessary pathways to success because of what you will learn from them. And the other thing is, this is so easy to say, but so hard to do. When you're in the middle of your problems, whether they're problems in college, where you're trying to figure things out, when you start working, or in your family life or personal life, don't be so quick to get that problem solved or to get out of it because it feels uncomfortable. We all know how it is to be in uncertainty, to be waiting, to be unsure, to not know what's coming next. It's a hard feeling to deal with. But one thing is for certain, if you can stay in there, stay with the discomfort, stay with the not knowing, you will learn things that you never expected. As my professor used to say, don't be in such a hurry to solve your problem. Let your problem solve you. Next, these detours, these mistakes, these roadblocks will open doors and open windows that you would have never thought of, which you would never even have considered doing. Like I said, who in his mind at 29 years old would have thought that he was going to become a high school principal? Who, when he always dreamed to be a lifetime teacher, ended up opening a cancer center? Who, when he first took down a plastic point-and-shoot camera underwater, would have ever thought his films would come out on Nat Geo and other channels? Never did that occur to me. But because I was placed in situations which made me think differently and look differently, these opportunities started to arise. For a while, I really considered myself a failure when I hated my consulting job. But when I came home to Xavier, it really felt like I was coming home. When I was at Harvard, I really felt I was a failure when I gave all that up in order to come back to the Philippines. But once I put up that cancer center, again, it felt fine. Now, like I said, we don't always choose these things. We don't always choose what happens to us, especially the bad stuff. But there is a way for the bad stuff to give birth to good new opportunities and good new beginnings. That's where you have to have faith. That's where you have to hang on during the painful periods and know that because you are doing your passion, it's going to pay off for you in the end. And finally, don't worry if your passion changes over time. Don't worry if your vocation changes over time. Once upon a time, if you had one job, you stuck to that job, you came in entry level, worked there for 30 years, became CEO, and then finished with your golden parachute. That used to be the model before. Nowadays, it's different. You see people moving from job to job, different sectors, different fields, doing all different stuff. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. In fact, it might even be better than just sticking to one. Why? Because remember the formula for vocation. Go where your heart's deep gladness meets the world's deep needs. What makes your heart deeply glad will change over time. What the world needs will change over time. So if, again, we look at my example in my little roadmap, I can kind of connect the dots looking backwards. That's the theme of Steve Jobs, by the way. I can connect the dots looking backwards, and I can say, for the first 20 years of my life, it was education. Then my vocation changed. The next 15 years, it became cancer support. And now for the next 15 and probably till the end, I'm going to be spending time with the fish, trying to save our oceans. So, does changing jobs, changing vocations, does that mean it's something bad, that you don't know what's going on, you're not decided, you're not committed? No. You're simply following what your heart is truly telling you and what the world is saying. Yeah, I need that. And if you can do that, I can guarantee you, you will be a success. Your GPS will always be calibrated and it will never fail. These are examples, like I'm an older guy, like they said, been working for 40 years, I'm a senior citizen. So my examples are more from my working days forward. But these are lessons I wish I had learned earlier. And that's why I'm sharing them with you. Thank you very much for your attention.